Hello, I'm Darryl Anderson and welcome to GroundCoverTV. This episode we've decided to do something a little different and present the program from one of GRDC's farm business updates. This one's at Bendigo and it's part of a new initiative from GRDC to raise the management capacity of farm advisors and growers. More about that later, because here's what's coming up in this episode of GroundCoverTV. The Weed Seed Wizard, controlling weeds before they see the light of day.
The idea of a calculating tool to keep track of weed seed banks came up as something that people thought was desirable, researchers and the farmers themselves.
Also, regional solutions for chickpea growers.
CISA 603 has been trialled throughout southern Australia, and even though it is very well adapted for WA, it is well suited to southern Australia.
And Australian durum, helping growers meet international demand.
Well production is pretty much static, but the demand for pasture is increasing, particularly in Asia, and we see a potential there.
Those stories and a lot more, plus a special feature on the GroundCover newspaper which has reached an impressive milestone, all in this episode of GroundCoverTV.
Oil price, which is demand driven, both sides.
This farm business update is kind of a joint venture between GRDC and farm business management specialists, with the outcome being better farm business decision making. Our first story is also about a GRDC partnership, an intriguing thing called the Crop Biofactories Initiative.
Designing a new crop for Australia is pretty exciting.
Craig Wood has put his background in molecular biology and genetic engineering to good use, developing an industrial oil, and it comes from an often overlooked plant, the humble safflower.
It's an ancient crop, very undeveloped, very underutilised in Australia, and I think some of what I've managed to bring is some of these very modern techniques to this ancient crop.
It's all thanks to the Crop Biofactories Initiative, a joint partnership between GRDC and CSIRO to develop biomaterials, industrial substances used to make building materials, plastics and polymers sourced from plant products rather than mineral oils.
The Biofactories Initiative is really about finding new uses for grain and new crops that growers can grow that will make them more money.
It's really a long-term alliance to try and develop industrial products from crop plants so that Australian farmers can participate in the renewable industries of the future.
Safflower is an ideal choice as it's currently not widely grown in Australia but potentially has a large growing area. It has agronomic advantages as a summer break crop with drought resistance and a large taproot. After 8 years' research, the team have a world first.
We now are up to about 95% oleic acid, so it's almost perfectly pure oleic acid. It's the highest purity of any fatty acid in any kind of oil, and I think that is very exciting.
This puts it in the category of an industrial chemical.
It's a breakthrough for the Crop Biofactories Initiative because it's the first target product that we have been able to make in safflower, and I guess it's the start of the pipeline for other products that we hope to produce in safflower.
So what's the benefit of increasing oleic acid levels to 95%? Oilseeds usually contain a mixture of saturated, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids. Industrial products need a high purity of monounsaturates.
The monounsaturates are useful in two ways. Firstly, they have a very high stability, so if we're using the oil in industrial applications like a lubricant, for instance, a high temperature application, the oil has to be extremely stable, and monounsaturates, oleic acid, give that stability. Also, it's useful as a chemical feedstock because we can break that molecule in the middle, if you like, and make two shorter molecules that can go into polymer production and replace petrochemicals in those products.
And that means the production of nylon and polymer.
This may not look much like a chemical lab for the production of plastics, adhesives and lubricants, but in one way, that's just what it is.
And with fossil fuels on the decline, an alternative to petrochemicals is welcome news.
There's all those wonderful advantages when you look at grain-based products now, and they're a renewable product. and that's the beauty of them.
Industry has been asking for this kind of product for many years. They're prepared to pay more for these kinds of oils because it's something that they can't get from any other source.
We're already seeing demand on the rise.
The super high oleic oil will end up predominantly in biolubricants, so replacing petroleum-based lubricants. Very good for sensitive applications in the environment because these are biodegradable and will have high stability.
Demand is increasing from the plastics and polymer sector too. Car manufacturers want to produce components like dashboards and engine parts out of renewable plastics. And it's not just heavy industry looking to biomaterials.
Some of the major companies are starting to use bio-based products in their packaging. Coca-Cola has a bottle which is replacing PET with 30% plant-originated plastic. So this market is really going to take off now because consumers are interested in using renewable products.
Higher levels of oleic acid can't be produced in safflower through conventional plant breeding methods because it simply doesn't have enough genetic variation. Instead, one of the plant's natural processes was switched off using safflower's own DNA in a process called gene silencing.
What we had to do in the developing oilseed was to stop oleic acid being converted to other fatty acids that we didn't want. So we had to downregulate or silence the enzymes that make those conversions. To do that, we introduce a piece of safflower's own DNA back into safflower, and it interferes with that enzyme system and effectively stops that system, and so we have a build-up of oleic acid.
The new material is grafted to a growing stalk to produce seed for the next generation.
We induce these little calli here, and they end up being genetically modified shoots, and these plants extend and mature into genetically modified safflower plants.
For growers, the Biofactories initiative could propagate a new industry within a decade.
We're probably 5 to 7 years from the crop being available to growers in Australia. We still have to develop the final varieties, test them in the field, and have the GM trait deregulated.
Estimates put production potential at 100,000 hectares, and safflower varieties have been tailored to suit regions from South Australia to Queensland. The Australian grains industry also has the necessary regulations in place to capitalise on the outcomes of the Biofactories initiative.
And we also have a series of regulatory processes that allow genetically modified crops to grow. And we also have a series of segregation policies that allow genetically modified crops to be segregated from their non-genetically modified siblings. So in some respects, Australia has a fantastic architecture ready for this kind of crop to grow and to thrive.
It's an opportunity for growers to diversify.
A lot of GRDC investments are trying to address a problem, whereas the Crop Biofactories initiative is really trying to take advantage of an opportunity that we see and helping to position growers to take advantage of that opportunity.
And when you think safflower originally came to our shores in the 50s as an industrial crop for paint and resin production, it's fitting this undervalued oilseed comes full circle, revamped as a 21st century industrial commodity.
It is exciting for safflower and exciting for Australian grain growers because although super high oleic acid is hopefully the first trait for bioproducts and biomaterials, is that there are many other research-related ideas out there that could be well suited for safflower into the future.
I'd reckon all the advisors here today would agree that providing solutions is not a case of one size fits all. Now the same applies to breeding programs, and while pulse breeding